Inside a sewer reeking of rot and decay, a woman is about to give birth. The brutal conditions leave her in unbearable agony. Yet she delivers a healthy baby boy. The tension on everyone's faces finally eases, and smiles appear. However, no one could have imagined that the very next day, this woman would smother her own child with her hands.
Dziecko nie żyje. Zabiła je.
There is no condemnation, only a silence as heavy as death. Everyone understands that under the boots of the Nazis, this cruel decision is what preserves the lives of them all. What shocks everyone even more is that this profit-driven thief, upon learning that the woman plans to throw the baby's body into the river, makes a choice more humane than anyone else. He insists on arranging a silent yet profound funeral for a child who never had the chance to see the world clearly. Although in everyone's eyes everything he does is merely for money, in this moment, he simply wants to ignite a flicker of courage for these trapped souls to keep living. This is a real scene that took place in the sewers of Lviv, Poland, in 1943. Now, let us step into that era shrouded in darkness, and touch the distortion and awakening of human nature under extreme persecution. In 1943, the German Nazis carried out the final liquidation of the Lviv ghetto. Any Jewish person discovered would be executed on the spot or deported. On the surface of Lviv, there was no longer any space left for Jewish survival. The male protagonist, Sosha, is a sewer worker who openly serves the Nazi authorities while secretly living as a thief. He often steals alongside his partner Sexapek, hiding the loot in concealed layers of the sewer, waiting for the right moment to trade within the ghetto. He has a young daughter and a loving wife named Wanda. After every theft, no matter how late it is, his unsuspecting wife always waits for him at home. At moments like these, Sosha usually pushes past his exhaustion to share a moment of closeness with his wife, quietly breathing in the scent of home. More importantly, the money he steals fills the gaps in the family's livelihood, keeping this struggling household fed. But he must use the excuse of a raise at work to ease his wife's doubts about the unusual income. One day, Sosha and Sexapek finish work again, but this time they clash near the alcove where they hide their stolen goods. The reason is that Sexapek's girlfriend may be about to leave him.
Musimy upylić troszkę tych fantów.
Jak gadał mi teraz, cienku płacu. Fanty tyle nie giltują. Użytków kupić można szlać świecidełkę za parę kiełbasy. Tak, szef.
Just then, a faint sound of chiseling echoes through the sewer. Sosha hesitates for a moment, then concludes that the sound is coming from above ground. They follow the noise, and sure enough, it is coming from overhead. This spot lies directly beneath the Jewish ghetto on the surface. Sosha's judgment is completely correct. At that very moment, in a dim underground hole above them, several men are desperately digging downward with shovels. They wrap their tools tightly to avoid making louder sounds. They turn out to be Jews from the ghetto, driven to the edge by increasingly frenzied and merciless persecution. They are attempting to escape the ghetto through the sewers. At this moment, they are only one step away from breaking through into the sewer. They succeed. Excited and unable to wait, they crawl into the sewer, as if rushing to embrace a bright new life. But what they do not realize is that the moment they hit the ground, two pairs of cold eyes are already staring straight at them.
No I na nowo się widzimy.
Sexapek recognizes the young man who climbs down at once. His name is Mundek, and the two had crossed paths just a few days earlier.
Kośku. Co jest?
To za ten pokiwany pierścionek zaręczynowy, który ty mi wcisnął.
At this moment, both sides fall into a tense silence, quietly testing each other, as if a fierce confrontation is unavoidable. Just then, an elderly man among the Jews named Ignacy breaks the deadlock. Without a word, he takes off his wristwatch and hands it over. If they want to avoid being reported, this watch alone is not enough. They must add another $500. This is the condition set by Sosha. They have no choice but to accept it. For them, staying alive outweighs everything else. After that, Sosha and Sexapek follow them back into the ghetto to collect the money that will buy their lives. Even so, the distrust between them does not fade, especially Sexapek, whose nervous expression is clearly noticed by Mundek. He is convinced that this timid Sexapek will eventually report them. With their numbers now on their side, Mundek begins urging his companions to work together and eliminate the two Polish men. At this critical moment, a single sentence from Sosha stops the situation from spiraling in the wrong direction.
Znam kanały lepiej jak własną kobietę. To nie jest miejsce dla was. Jesteś nuggets na sztukiem plotwach, więc...
Tak na dobry, są te odcinki, gdzie może by się dało. A za odpowiednią cenę.
Jaką?
500 kwiatów dziennie.
Umowa stoi.
That day, Sosha and Sexapak are in a bar discussing how to squeeze more benefits out of the group of Jews. Suddenly, a voice calls out to him. He turns toward the sound and sees an old friend he has not met in many years, Bortnik. He is Ukrainian, but it is clear that he is now serving as a military policeman under the German Nazis. Sure enough, during their conversation, Sosha learns that he has risen to the rank of commander and is taking part in the final operations targeting Jews. He then proudly shows Sosha a watch bearing the Nazi emblem. He boasts that this symbol means he can help anyone he chooses to help. However, for Sosha, this is not good news at all, because he must conceal from this old friend the fact that he has been dealing with Jews. That day, a new round of purges against the Jewish district begins. Across every street and alley of Lviv, Jews are fleeing in panic. Men and women, young and old alike, once discovered by Nazis or military police, are either shot without reason or sent to camps. At this moment, Lviv has become a city of brutality and death. Meanwhile, the Jews who have already paid Sosha a deposit are desperately rushing toward the breached sewer entrance. No matter how much doubt they once had about Sosha, trust is now their only option. At the same time, Sosha and Sexapak inside the sewer drop what they are doing and quickly move toward the entrance. This is the perfect moment to cash in on this big deal, and they ignore even the pleas of scattered refugees along the way, because there is no profit in it, and it only adds risk. On the other side, a massive crowd of Jews floods toward the broken opening, and the scene quickly turns chaotic and disorderly, with no one willing to give way. In the end, Mundek can only fire his gun to clear the path. However, their descent into the sewer does not go smoothly. First, the Jew Yannick blocks the entrance because of a dispute between his wife and his lover. Immediately after that, Ignacie's two children stubbornly refuse to enter the pitch-black hole. The chaos before his eyes once again fuels Mundek's suspicion towards Sosha. But before he can finish speaking, Sosha's voice echoes from within the sewer. Sosha does everything he can to calm them down, and the two children finally settle. In this way, amid an atmosphere of disgust and reluctance, the group of Jews squeezes into the foul, suffocating sewer. Even so, a pair of sisters still erupts into a fierce argument halfway through. The older sister is named Sona, and the younger one is called Mania. The younger sister loses control of her emotions and is completely unable to endure the stench of the sewer. She screams hoarsely, insisting she would rather return to the ghetto. Seeing that Sona can no longer keep the situation under control, Mundek, unable to stand by, rushes in to calm both sides. Because Mundek has always liked Sona and has been secretly pursuing her, he is even less willing to see her fall into trouble.
Zawiją się tam na górze. Klar, sie ist deine Schwester, deine einzige Familie.
Now, in the end, Sosha hides the group of Jews inside the sewer and then hurriedly leaves with Sexapak. However, on their way back, the floating corpses in the sewer make both of them feel a chill of fear. The rotting stench and the horrifying sights add an extra layer of dread and unease to an already tense act of hiding people. Sosha leaves the sewer in a daze, and the moment he steps onto the street, he runs straight into carts transporting bodies from the ghetto. Just as he freezes in place, a sharp shout suddenly rings out.
Всі постріляю! Руки! Ти жиде!
Не стріляйте, я не жид! Я знаю Бортника! Це мій приятель, Антоні Бортник!
Руки!
Under escort by soldiers, Sosha comes face to face with Bortnik. At this moment, Bortnik is carrying out executions of captured Jews. A casual question from Bortnik makes Sosha's heart tighten instantly, but he reacts quickly and brushes it off with evasive words. Clearly, Bortnik notices nothing unusual. When Sosha returns home, he is both physically and mentally exhausted, but his kind-hearted wife quickly prepares hot water to help him relax. During their conversation, Wanda mentions the clearing of the Jewish district, her words revealing sympathy and compassion for the Jews. When Sosha talks about how many people are making money by reporting Jews, Wanda shows open disgust towards such behavior. Meanwhile, Mania ultimately flees the sewer in the middle of the night. In her panic, Sona wants to return to the surface to search for her, but Mundek stops her. He promises that he will definitely bring Mania back. Early the next morning, Sosha goes to his usual food shop to buy supplies, but this time he purchases far more than usual. Catching the shopkeeper's attention, the shopkeeper does not press for answers and only asks a few questions jokingly.
W zeszłym tygodniu pana żona nie miała jeszcze ani grosza, a tu nagle zakupy dla wojska.
In truth, all the food Sosha buys is meant for the Jews in the sewer. He knows well that Jews are highly wary, and maintaining trust is crucial. More importantly, he wants to give this major deal a strong start. As expected, the food he brings triggers a scramble among the Jews. Sosha seizes the moment to propose a relocation plan.
Proszę was, tu będzie lepiej.
After rounds of bargaining, it is finally decided that 11 people will be moved to a more hidden and safer alcove at a cost of $500 per day, but the shrewd Ignacy still complains that the price is too high. After settling on the final price, Sosha heads straight home. Unexpectedly, before he even steps inside, he hears Bortnik's voice. Bortnik gets straight to the point and lays the issue out in front of him, caught completely off guard.
Pytałem właśnie twojej czarownej żony, gdzie cię czort nosi. Są підозри, що Жидова ховається в твоїх каналах.
Leopold nic nie wie na ten temat.
Ja ci już mówił, ja widział na trupy.
Одна пані з Полтавної визвала нас. З її кібля їде готованим цибулю і направді їде як хуляра. Сам чув. Кукній. Tu muszą być. To jak wejdziemy w tą włazą, to już będzie bardzo blisko. Da się tu zleźć?
No tak.
No to poszli. No poszli.
Sosha has no choice but to go along with him toward the reported area.
Niemcy płacą 500 złotych від голови. Żywą gotówką. To молься, що ми там в тих твоїх каналах знaleźli jakichś pajsatych.
Along the way, Bortnik's mind is filled with calculations about making money by capturing Jews, while Sosha focuses only on how to survive this ordeal. At the same time, the Jews in the sewer know nothing of this and continue waiting in anxious suspense. Sosha leads Bortnik into the foul-smelling sewer, with a soldier following closely behind. Unexpectedly, the moment the soldier steps down, a sudden scream sends fear through everyone's hearts. This abrupt sound echoes far through the pitch-black sewer. As they approach the marked spot of the report, Sosha, still without a plan, remains silent and tries to lead Bortnik straight past it. But unexpectedly, Bortnik still senses that something is wrong, with no way to avoid it. Sosha can only steel himself and guide them toward the alcove. As they go deeper, the stench of the sewer becomes unbearable. Rats scatter underfoot, and fear grips the senses.
Mogę sam sprawdzić, jak chcesz. Dobra, spity tam.
He signals the trembling Ignacy to stay quiet and gently pushes back the foot of his young daughter that is sticking out. In this way, both Sosha and the Jews hiding in the alcove narrowly escape disaster. Ignacy's wife also spits out the poison she had been holding in her mouth. Before long, Sosha's secret of hiding Jews is finally discovered by his wife, Wanda. The cause is the Swiss watch on Sexapek's wrist at the dinner table, the very watch Ignacy had pawned as payment for survival. At the same time, Wanda finally understands the truth behind Sosha's frequent claims of getting raises. Wanda's anger does not come from the fact that her husband is helping Jews. It comes from the reality that the entire family is trapped in grave danger while she has been kept completely in the dark. When Bortnik meets Sosha again 2 days later, he brings him a shocking piece of news.
Kiepsko. I mówiłem, i byli kurwysyny. Nakryli całą grupę lejbów w twoim kurwa kanale. Ty słyszał?
Jak, gdzie?
Straciliśmy taką fajną okazję.
Wiele ich tam było.
Nie znam, skazali.
Jak jest tam jeszcze jaki, to nie minie tremy, będzie nasz. Tu muszę iść.
Stoj, czego spieszy?
Although Sosha verbally reassures Bortnik, he remains doubtful inside and uses work as an excuse to leave with Sexapek. What he does not expect is that this sudden incident completely crushes the timid Sexapek. Sexapek ultimately chooses to quit. When Sosha enters the sewer, he finds Mundek cleaning up Jewish corpses, but he realizes these are not the people he hid. However, Mundek, who has never truly trusted him, still regards Sosha as an informant. Already simmering with anger over Sexapek's departure, Sosha is now falsely accused by the very people he saved. And at this moment, he is truly furious. For a long time afterward, Sosha does not return to see the Jews he has hidden. As time passes, the Jews hiding in the alcove grow increasingly uneasy and agitated. Any minor friction can escalate into violence or confrontation at any moment. Yanek, who abandoned his wife and daughter, stands out the most, even threatening to kill children who make noise. When the day comes to collect the survival payment again, Sosha brings food and returns to the alcove. Before he can speak, Ignacy pulls him aside and timidly admits that he has no money left, but offers pre-war hidden jewelry for him to take instead. Following Ignacy's directions, Sosha indeed finds the jewelry in a cemetery. After returning home, he decides to surprise his wife.
Tu Higara. Mam mu tu opchnąć. Wandzia, ty by nie musiała więcej pracować. Ty miała służącą. One nawet nie są wdzięczne za to, co ja dla nich zrobił.
Wanda happily gestures with excitement, but when she hears her husband complain about the Jews, she slowly withdraws her hands in the face of this unjust wealth. At the same time, an unbelievable scene unfolds inside the alcove where the Jews are hiding. Yannick teams up with two others and, in the middle of the night, steals the belongings of their fellow refugees before fleeing. The next day, Sosha returns the jewelry intact and tells Ignacy that he will not be coming back again. But just as Sosha is about to leave, the suspicious Mundek suddenly attacks him.
Er hatte das längst im Keller. Bist du verrückt, das?
Zdechnie ci beze mnie, jak psy.
A devastated Sosha staggers out of the alcove, with the Jews' pleas for him to stay echoing behind him. From that moment on, Sosha never returns. The Jews hiding in the alcove continue to waste away in endless darkness, with no direction and no sight of an end. Their only companions are foul slop and rats crawling across the ground. Soon, winter arrives. One day, Mundek goes out in search of food and is unfortunately spotted by German soldiers. He believes wearing the Star of David will help him slip by, but Mundek's aggressive demeanor arouses deep suspicion from the soldier. All of this is witnessed by Sosha, who happens to be working above ground.
Cześć, parchu, bieg do cholery! Dzięki za przytypanie tego strula. Tak ci parchu urządzisz, że nie będziesz mógł na dupie siadać. Was ist passiert? Parchaty Żyd miał mi pomagać na doli w kanałach. On mi normalnie z ręki. Was redet der Polacke?
In the face of imminent danger, the two join forces and kill the soldier. However, Sosha's help, given without holding a grudge, still fails to earn Mundek's trust, and soon after, their actions trigger ruthless retaliation from the Germans. 1 to 50. This is the brutal price paid by the entire Polish nation. What breaks Sosha's heart the most is that among those hanged is Sexapak. A few days later, Sosha is assigned a new partner. One day while working, Sosha suddenly discovers Ignacy's two children. It turns out they have gotten lost. It is hard to imagine that in such a complex underground pipe network, without encountering Sosha, the fate of these two children would have been unthinkable. So when Sosha returns the children to their mother, the couple is overwhelmed with gratitude and tears. After repeatedly stepping in to help, Sosha finally earns their trust in that moment. But on the other hand, the lack of coordination with his new partner directly leads to another crisis. That day at work, the partner accidentally stumbles into the alcove hiding the Jews, and after being attacked by Mundek, he flees the opening in panic. Fortunately, Sosha happens to witness the scene and urgently arranges for the Jews to relocate. However, because they must crawl through an opening less than 60 centimeters wide, the transfer proceeds very slowly, especially Chaja, Yannick's lover, whose heavier build causes her to struggle painfully in the tunnel for a long time before finally getting through. She is then immediately mocked by Ignacy's wife. Yet shortly after Sosha leaves, something completely unexpected happens.
Ich will auch ein Kind. Ich will auch ein Kind. Seid mir moich. Seid mir moich.
Chaja's resilience ultimately earns the group's acceptance of the child she is about to give birth to. Meanwhile, at Mundek's request, Sosha finds him a contact. This person can arrange for him to infiltrate a camp in order to search for Mania on Sona's behalf. On their way there, at a sewer exit, they discover the bodies of Yannick and the other two who had stolen supplies and fled. Judging by their location, they had not gone far before being shot. But at this point, none of it really matters anymore. In the end, the contact uses a switch tactic to help Mundek slip into the camp, yet the brutal conditions inside nearly cost him his life.
Wo ist deine Kappe?
Jemand hat sie mir gestohlen, Herr Schafführer.
Hast du hier nichts zu suchen.
Der Mann ist gesund. Sehen Sie das nicht? Dann tun Sie es mit Bedacht. Lütze! Bitte.
However, when he finally finds Mania, her reaction is nothing like Mundek expected.
Klara nie czuje się winna. Ja nie mogłabym żyć w tym kanale.
Możesz? Mania, jestem tu dla ciebie. Wiem, jak nas stąd wydostać.
Mania ultimately chooses to refuse. Just then, Yannick's wife, who is also in the camp, spots Mundek and lunges at him. Her cries quickly alert the guards. At the moment Mundek is forced to flee. A gunshot rings out and Yannick's wife collapses. Mundek's effort to persuade Mania to return to her sister ultimately fails. Sona holds Mundek tightly in her arms, and perhaps only in this moment does her grief over losing her loved ones ease slightly. The next day, Chaja goes into labor. Childbirth is already agonizing enough for a woman, let alone in a filthy sewer. In the end, with everyone's help, she gives birth to a baby boy. Yet the arrival of this new life instantly exposes everyone in hiding to grave danger.
Zdajecie sobie sprawę z zagrożenia? Patrz, co mnie tu pół miasta.
Chaja takes the baby into her arms and falls asleep holding him. That night, no one hears the baby cry again. It is not until early the next morning that they discover Chaja has smothered her own child. The moment is silent, but everyone feels a pain that tears at the heart, and Chaja herself seems hollowed out, unable to utter a single word. This is the very scene with which the story began. In the end, Sosha buries the child by the riverbank, as everyone prays silently in their hearts. Thus a new life, from beginning to end, flickers like a struck match and is extinguished in an instant. Yet it is precisely this fleeting spark of light that fully ignites Sosha, igniting the courage for everyone to keep living. Before long, Passover arrives, and that day Sosha brings food down to the Jews in the sewer. But Ignacie's youngest daughter remains withdrawn and depressed, so Sosha decides to give her a special gift. This utterly ordinary street scene becomes, in the child's eyes, something like a fairy tale, beautiful yet unreachable. Soon after, however, Ignacy and his wife say the words to Sosha that they least want to speak.
Pani Socha, nie możemy już płacić.
W ostatni piątek wysupłaliśmy resztę. Nie mamy nic. Nic.
At that moment, a self-mocking and helpless expression appears on Sosha's face. A few days later, the day of his daughter's first communion arrives. Sosha invites several friends to witness this special occasion together. Yet before the ceremony is halfway through, a sudden torrential rain begins to fall. Based on his years of experience working in the sewers, Sosha knows the amount of rainfall will soon flood the alcove where the Jews are hiding. He is forced to finally tell his wife Wanda the truth, but
Muszę iść.
Zwariował.
Iść do wyższych komory.
Komu nie stawcie?
as he hurries toward the hiding place, he encounters an even more horrifying scene. At the manhole, under German command, Bortnik is preparing to plant explosives in the sewer. He claims this is a gift for the Soviet forces about to enter the city. After Sosha explains the situation to the Germans, they immediately order Bortnik to go down and check with him. If the report proves false, Sosha will be executed on the spot. However, Sosha's excuse for missing his daughter's ceremony is far too flimsy. As he looks at the household items floating in the water, Bortnik seems to suddenly understand everything.
A musicie szczurów też ratować! Tak! Chcesz ratować szczurów! Nie wiem, o czym ty gadasz! Od samego początku pod moim nosem mówiła ślubowa! Zwariował! Stój! Wojtek! Wojtek, kurwa, stój! Wojtek! Jedyny człowiek z Tuńskiego, któremu ufałem! No i? Zrzuciłeś mnie! No zacznij mnie! A już nigdy stąd nie wyjdziesz! Każemy mi prawdą!
With a sudden movement, Sosha disappears into the dark sewer, while Bortnik is swallowed by the raging current, his sounds fading away. At the same time, the water level in the Jews' hiding alcove continues to rise, but incredibly, the powerful current suddenly forces the manhole cover open. Exhausted, Sosha finds Bortnik's body at a drainage outlet, and the Jews hiding in the alcove survive. Almost miraculously, when Sosha returns home, he finds the room empty, with only a shattered photo frame on the floor, a picture of him and his wife. It seems this time his wife is truly angry. Before he realizes it, he falls into a deep sleep. Wanda tenderly wipes the grime from Sosha's face, and in this moment, the couple smiles together. Yes, in this single moment, the fact that they are both still alive is reason enough to smile. No one knows how much time passes, but one day, deep in the pitch-dark alcove, the Jews begin to faintly hear increasingly dense gunfire. Mundek also vaguely hears shouts in Russian drifting down from above. When he can no longer contain himself and wants to rush out, Ignacy holds him back with all his strength, because now, they can no longer afford a single mistake. Just then, Sosha's voice comes from above. Shielding his eyes from the blinding light, Mundek sees a large hand reaching down toward him from the opening, and when he returns to the surface, what he sees is a world bursting with color. Everything is over, the darkness has passed. The kind-hearted Wanda hands food to the Jews who have come up from what felt like hell, and a proud Sosha boasts to the neighbors about the results of his good deeds. In the end, the Jews saved by Sosha emerge into freedom after surviving 14 months in the sewers of Lviv.